Hi there. Welcome to my homebuyer series, The Fearless Homebuyer, a guide to a confident and successful home buying process. So, the objective of this series is to provide strategies, tools, tips, information that is going to ultimately eliminate or at least reduce the fear and anxiety of purchasing a home. We want to get you to take that step to move forward. Now, I have four parts to this series. If you have been watching my channel, you see that there should be two already. Part one is the budget prep. Part two is the credit profile prep. And those two parts have led up to this particular part of the series, part three, lender financing overview. So today we're going to talk about the lending process, everything that you need to know in order to move forward. So before we begin, just a little bit about me. My name is Gia Felder. I'm an associate broker, realtor here in the Metro Atlanta area in Georgia. I have been in real estate since 2018. Most people don't know that I am a Georgia peach, born and raised here in Georgia, in South Georgia, as a matter of fact. I am actually very passionate about generational wealth. So it's nothing profound. I just want to make sure that I'm part of the solution and participating in figuring out ways that others who may think that they may not have been able to build wealth to do so, but through real estate, because it's probably one of the easier ways to build wealth for generations to come. Now, I love to travel. Haven't since the past couple of years, but I love to travel, and I also love to read. I'm definitely a movie watcher, so you will often find me in a movie theater watching a action movie. But enough about me. Let's get started. Part three, lender financing overview. We want to get you ready now to apply for that mortgage. So you've done your budget prep, you've done your credit prep, and so now you should feel more confident, or after this seminar, feel more comfortable with moving forward with applying for a mortgage. Now, I just want to give you a disclaimer. I'm not a lender, I'm not a loan officer. So all of this is a high level overview of things that I feel like you should know for the mortgage process. So you must make sure that you talk to a lender specifically for the most update information that's available, and everything is particular to you. So if there's anything that we find here that is inaccurate, I will be sure to either update the description or put it in the comments. So I just want to quickly go through the mortgage timeline. It's just a way to kind of level set this series, just to give you an idea of how things go. Now, some things are going to go quickly. Some things may take a little bit longer depending on your situation. But for the most part, this is the timeline. The first thing you're going to do is complete your application. And once you complete your application and submit any documentation that you need, you're going to get a pre-approval. Once you get that pre-approval, then you will go out with me and we'll go on a home search, find a home and go under contract. And then once we go under contract, we're going to submit that purchase and sale agreement / contract to the lender. And that's where everything really starts, is once you go under contract. So when that happens, the application and documentation, all of that is going to be verified. You're probably going to end up talking to the lender a lot more than me during this particular process. So you go through everything. Your appraisal is going to be ordered. The underwriter is going to review or continue to review all of the documentation. So again, more information may be requested. They may ask for information again. Just be patient and be ready. Then your loan is going to move from the pre-approval phase to the approval phase. And once that happens, you're going to get what's called a closing disclosure. The closing disclosure is going to give you all of your numbers, what your mortgage is going to be, what are you going to have to bring to the table at closing, who's paying what. All of that information will be on that closing disclosure. You're going to have to make sure that that is sent to you, signed by you, and returned back to the lender at least 3 business days prior to closing. If not, closing just gets delayed every day until that happens. Once we get to that, then the lender is going to provide a clear to close. Everything is good. You've met all your conditions. You're good to go. We can actually now move to closing day, where the lender is going to fund your loan. You're going to sign all the documents, and you are going to get those keys. So I want to just talk really quickly about funds that are considered for income. And a lot of people are actually not aware of everything that's on this list. Now, of course, you know, monthly employment wages, your income from your paychecks and your job, or from if you're a 1099 or self-employed, from your revenue, that is considered. Income from businesses. Social Security income is also considered. 401k retirement income. So if you are someone who is actually retired and you are living off of your retirement income or retirement funds, that can actually be used for considered for income to get approved for a mortgage. And along the same veins is your pension. Disability income works the same way. If you're getting disability, that can actually be counted towards your income, even if you're working. If you're working and you're still getting disability income, you can count both of those. And finally, alimony and child support. Now, we talked a little bit about the income that you can consider, and you definitely want to make sure anything that you want to be considered as part of the mortgage process to figure out what your budget is, you want to include it. If there's something that you don't want to include, talk to your lender. Most likely you would not have to. So just speak to your lender to find out what all you can include as income. Now we're going to shift a little bit into debt. So a lender looks at your income, and then they look at your debt, and they combine those to come up with your debt to income ratio. So there's actually 2. The first one is the front end ratio. And so that just really focuses on the housing debt, particularly for the mortgage. They want to determine, based on your income and your debts, how much mortgage you can afford. So they're not thinking about anything else. Mortgage payment, taxes, insurance, and your mortgage insurance protection also. Your debt to income ratio for the back end is probably the most important one that lenders look at. And it includes not only the housing debt, but any consumer debt that appears on your credit report. So that is very, very important that you understand that. So utilities such as your power bill, your water bill, those are not on your credit report. So things like your car payment, credit card payments, student loans, things like that, those are the items that are on your credit reports. And so they're going to consider those and determine what your back end debt to income ratio is. So please make sure you keep that in mind. So this is the reason why we started with budget and credit prep, because I talk about those items in the part 2 for credit prep. So I also want to quickly just tell you what you are responsible for when it comes to getting financed. That is Earnest money. Earnest money is funds that you pay upfront once you go under contract. It is a good faith gesture to the seller, and it's usually required. Most times we cannot get away from offering earnest money, but it's telling the seller that you really want to buy the home, and because you are really committed to purchasing that home, you're willing to put money up front that you can potentially lose if you don't do everything you're supposed to do in order to get to the closing table. So you always want to make sure that you do that so that you don't lose those earnest money, which is why you get the help of a real estate agent to make sure that you stay on track. Inspection is also something that you're responsible for. It is outside of any other funds that you have to pay, but it's definitely something that we highly recommend that you do for any house that you are considering. You want to make sure that everything's looking good. And we'll talk a little bit more about inspection in part 4. The next one is the appraisal. So this is something that right now lenders are all requiring for the mortgage loan. And so that's something that you would be responsible for paying, is the appraisal. The lender goes out and gets an appraiser to perform that appraisal, but you are responsible for paying for that. And then of course your down payment and your closing costs. So let's break those two down a little bit more. So you can see here on the right-hand side, I've mentioned down payment and closing costs. Now, what I've found with most buyers is that they are familiar with down payment, and they're always focused on, well, what's down payment assistance? How can I get down payment assistance? But they don't realize that there is another component, which is closing costs. And those two together is what we call, and what the lender calls, cash to close. So you're going to hear that term. You're going to see it on a couple of documents as well. Cash to close is your down payment plus your closing costs. It's the funds that you need to bring to the closing table to make sure that you get those keys. So let's talk a little bit more about both of those. So your down payment is an upfront payment made by you when you're purchasing a home. It's a percentage of the total cost of the home, and it does depend on the lender's criteria and also your financial situation. So by what we mean by that is you can be approved for an FHA loan, which is 3.5%. You can be approved for a conventional, which might be anywhere from 3 to 5% or maybe more. You can be approved for USDA or VA, which would not require a down payment. So that's what we mean by lender's criteria and your financial situation, what you will qualify for. The main purpose of this is to reduce the amount that needs to be borrowed. And it is going to show the lender that you are committed to the purchase and that you have the financial means to make the future payments on that mortgage. Now, one thing I want to focus on for down payment and closing costs is who can contribute, because a lot of people don't realize that there are several avenues for you to obtain your down payment. So of course you can do that through savings, retirement funds, also your family members. Talk to the lender to get an idea of specifically who qualifies as a family member to assist you with your down payment. But please note that they're going to be required to submit supporting documentation of those funds. Now, this may cause some panic for you, but please know, lenders are not required to do anything beyond verifying those funds. They're not checking to see what else is happening on those on that documentation, particularly if it's a bank statement they're showing. They're not interested in any of that. They're just interested in making sure that the funds that are being given to you is funds that they have, and also showing that those funds are moving from their account to your account. So don't panic on that. I highly encourage you, if there's a family member who's willing to, just explain that to them or have them talk to the lender to reassure them. Employers. So if you work for a company, make sure you check with your employer to see if there's something that they offer. Sometimes they may not advertise it. So just talk to your HR department, see if they offer down payment assistance as an employee benefit. Nonprofit organizations are also available. They may not always be available in your area, but it's always good to kind of check around to see if there are some nonprofit organizations that offer it. And they usually offer it to low income to moderate income buyers. So if you fall into one of those categories, definitely start checking around in your community to see if it's something that's available. Finally, the most popular one are government programs, and what you may be familiar with is Georgia Dream or the Atlanta Housing Authority, who offers down payment assistance for those who are going to live in the city of Atlanta. It's always important that you check with your lender regarding the policies on down payment sources. Make sure that it's properly documented, make sure that it's properly presented to the lender so they can make sure that everything's good to go. Now let's move into closing costs. So closing costs are the fees and expenses that are paid by the buyer at the time of closing of a real estate transaction. These costs are in addition to the down payment, and they're typically paid out of pocket by the buyer. So when I say these things, just know that down payment assistance and closing costs are your responsibility. However, there are ways for you to get assistance with these two components, which is why I'm focusing on those two things today. Typical cost of for closing costs are lender fees, title and escrow, appraisals, homeowners insurance, property taxes, and recording fees. Now, this is not all inclusive, but these are probably the most popular closing costs that you would be responsible for. Now, who can contribute for closing costs? So, of course, you as a buyer. Lenders can sometimes offer credit, so you can always ask your lender if that is available. It's not required, but sometimes they may offer that. Employers, so the same employers that offer down payment assistance, sometimes that amount can also cover your closing costs. And this holds true for programs with nonprofit organizations and the government programs that we mentioned, such as Georgia Dream and Atlanta Housing Authority. Some of those funds that they offer can cover all of your down payment and maybe some or all of your closing costs. The last one that's here in bold is the one that I want to focus on just a teeny bit, and that is the seller. Now, it depends on the market. You know, if we have a buyer's market, then sellers will often do this pretty willingly. If it's a seller's market, not so much. At the time of this recording, we're kind of in a in-between state where we're still a seller's market because there's not a lot of inventory, but yet buyers are hesitant because of high interest rates. So we're seeing where sellers are contributing to closing costs. So keep that in mind. For conventional, if you get approved for a conventional loan, then it's up to 3%. And it's up to 6% if you are actually doing more than 10% for a down payment. For an FHA loan, they can contribute up to 6%, and for a VA loan, up to 4%. All of this must be documented properly in the purchase agreement. So make sure your real estate agent knows what type of loan that you have, and based on that, they can help negotiate closing costs to see how much that they can get from the seller without going over. Again, same with down payment. Make sure that you are disclosing this to the lender, which you would do via the purchasing agreement / contract, but just make sure that they're aware of this, that you're doing this, so that you can make sure that you are good to go in that respect as well. So now we're going to dive a little bit into some loan products. So again, I'm not a lender, not a loan officer. What I want to make sure that I accomplish here today is that you're just aware of the different programs, because a lot of people focus on maybe a couple, and there are more that are available to you that we really want to make sure that you're talking to your lender to see if you qualify for. The first one is the most common one, which is the FHA loan. FHA means Federal Housing Administration. So this is a type of loan that is backed by the Federal Housing Administration. So what that means is if a borrower defaults on their loan, the FHA will provide some protections against those losses. And so because of that, that lowers the risk for that loan. So it doesn't completely eliminate it, but it lowers the risk factor, which makes it much easier for you as the buyer to qualify. So this is why this particular loan is most popular. It lowers the debt to income, it lowers the credit score, all of that, so that you're now able to qualify for a mortgage. So just a few things to highlight here about the FHA loan. You can actually go down to 500. Federal Housing Administration will allow any lender to approve you down to 500. But just keep in mind, the down payment that's associated with that is going to be higher. So we prefer that the lowest score that you have is a 580, and it will keep you at the 3.5 down payment requirement. The maximum loan limits, you're going to find that there's two areas of Georgia that are considered. There's Metro Atlanta area, which is a lot of the surrounding counties around Atlanta, and then all other areas is usually Macon and down south of Macon that are considered the all other areas. And then some parts of northern Georgia would also be included in this. Again, talk to your lender and they can give you the specifics of what you would fall under. So those are the loan limits for those two areas. Debt to income guidelines. So the guidelines for this is 43%, but up to a maximum of 56.9% with compensating factors. And we'll talk about that next. So keep in mind, front end debt to income can be anywhere between 31 to 40%. The back end is up to 56.9%. And remember, back end is probably the most important one. So let's talk a little bit about compensating factors. These are just positive attributes, so positive things that can show that you can repay despite having a higher debt to income. So you may not be familiar with these, but I want you to be familiar with a couple of these because you may hear the lender talk about these and ask. So we don't want you to be blindsided by and confused about what those mean. So the first one is residual income. So if the borrower has significant funds remaining each month after all expenses are paid, the lender may allow a higher debt to income ratio. Because remember, debt to income ratio on the debt side includes everything that's on your credit report. So it's possible you may or may not be paying all of that, or may not be responsible for all of that, and you're trying to figure that out. But if you have a lot of income that's left, then the lender may allow you. Cash reserves is probably the most common term that you're going to hear. And so this means that the borrower has a significant cash reserve on hand after closing in the event of a financial emergency. So when you talk to a lender, you may hear them say, okay, do you have at least 1 to 2 months of mortgage payments in your account or in your savings account? And if so, that's usually what they're referring to as cash reserves, because that means that if you have that and you have a financial emergency, you can at least pay your mortgage. So the others are, I won't go through those because they're not very popular, but you can read through these. You can definitely go back and review the recording to get more information. But minimum payment shock, they want to make sure that, going from renting to now owning, paying a mortgage payment, that there's not a huge difference in your financial situation. High credit scores is definitely one that's most popular. So if you have a high DTI, the higher credit score could really help you. and in some respects, a steady employment as well. And so that could mean that if you have been, say, a teacher at the same school for 6 years, 10 years, they may consider you less of a risk and allow you that higher DTI. So again, talk to your lender about all of this. So the next loan I want to talk to you about is USDA. I consider this kind of a sleeper loan, meaning that it is not as commonly talked about. However, with how things are going in the Atlanta market, where if you've noticed the shift, everything is moving further away from the city of Atlanta. So you are now moving into Walton County, Barrow County, Newton County, where Covington is. And so as you move further out, you're getting into territories that can qualify for USDA. And so USDA is, again, just like FHA, the loan is backed by the United States Department of Agriculture. So the USDA offers these programs through its Rural Development Program to help low to moderate income individuals purchase homes. So the main thing about this program is that the homes have to be in rural or suburban areas. So definitely not the city of Atlanta, but there's definitely areas outside of the metro Atlanta area that could qualify. So highlights of this loan is that it covers the down payment 100%. So there's no need to go and look for down payment assistance if you qualify for this. Again, the home must be in a designated rural area. Your lender would be able to help you to figure this out. And also, just know that there are some strict income and DTI criteria. So I won't get into the income criteria, but I wanted to talk again about some of the other things. Minimum score, there actually isn't one. That is going to be determined by the lender. Here are your maximum loan limits for Georgia and the debt to income guidelines. This is probably the one that makes USDA tough to get approved for. However, if you have a debt to income that is in line with that back end, then you may qualify for this. And so I highly recommend that you talk to your lender about this particular program. VA program. So VA is Department of Veterans Affairs. So it's available to those that are eligible for a VA loan when they meet certain service criteria and are able to obtain a VA certificate of eligibility, a COE. One of the main benefits of this is that it has some very favorable loan terms, including no down payment and no private mortgage insurance premium. That's huge. That can actually save you hundreds of dollars each month without that mortgage premium. And it can be used for single family, townhomes, or even condominiums. Scores are determined by the lender. DTI is also determined by the lender. But the fabulous thing about this loan is the limit. It is $726,200. That is an awesome loan limit. You can really find some fabulous houses with that type of a limit. So make sure you talk to your lender. If you have been in active service, if you've been in reserves, you may qualify for this. If you were a spouse of someone who is active in service, make sure that you talk to your lender because you want to take advantage of this if you can. And then finally, conventional loans. So conventional loans are not backed by anything. So not FHA, not VA, not USDA. And because of this, all of the criteria is a little bit stricter. But the thing about this is that even though the terms are stricter, it does ensure that the home buyer has a stronger credit and stable income to make and are able to make a larger down payment. So just know conventional, the likelihood of you having to make a slightly higher down payment does come into play more so than FHA, VA, or USDA. Minimum scores. So determined by the lender, most are at 620. Again, same loan limits as the VA. Debt to income is also determined by the lender, can go as high as 50%. It's possible that compensating factors could come into play here. So again, you want to talk to your lender. I can't stress that enough. So down here on the home stretch, I just want to talk to you about some things that you need to know and be aware of. Again, the purpose of this series is to make you less anxious and fearful of the process. So we want to keep these things in mind. Picking the right lender. It is okay to speak with or apply to more than one lender. Usually there is a window of anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks where you can talk to and apply with more than one lender to see who can give you the best terms for your needs. So don't just always go with one, or if you don't necessarily want to talk to or apply with more than one lender, consider a mortgage broker who does have the access to shop your application to several lenders at one time. You want to make sure you're connecting with expert loan officers. So it's not just the lender, it is the loan officer. We want to make sure that they are experts of their company's products, that they can anticipate the underwriter's questions. You want them to also be willing to assist you when your criteria hasn't been met. So they want to be able to clearly tell you what the criteria is, walk you through it. If you don't qualify, they should be able to tell you how you can get to pre-approval. Willing to provide numbers or estimates. So they cannot guarantee anything at the beginning, but based on your application and what you're approved for, and then if you show them a home, if they can give you some really good estimates, then that's a lender or loan officer that's a winner in my book. And finally, timely responses and follow-ups. I hate to mention this, but this is something that I have encountered a lot with loan officers not being timely, not wanting to follow up timely, and that could really be the difference between getting a home that you love and not getting the home because you don't have the answers that you need in order to submit that offer. So some do's and don'ts. So you want to make sure that you're doing some things and you're not doing some things, because we want to make sure that you are going to avoid getting denied. We want to make sure you're getting approved. Don't make any financial changes such as changing jobs. Please don't do that. Don't quit your job. Don't apply for new credit. So credit cards, that's a no-no. Don't make large purchases. You will not believe the number of people who have did this in the car. I don't know what it is about cars, but everyone wants to purchase a car, especially when they're going through the mortgage process. Don't do it if you are if you want to do it to celebrate the home, the fact that you're buying a home. Another large purchase that we have found that people do is for furniture. Just don't do anything. I know it's a hard thing to avoid when you're about to purchase a home, particularly with furnishings. Don't do it. Go window shop. Go window shop, make a list of the things that you want to buy. And then when you go to the closing date table, the next day, go shop to your heart's content. Go buy your car. Don't hide financial information. Probably the most important one. They're going to find out. Your loan officer is going to find out. And it's just going to make things harder if they have to find out later, which could mean you're under contract. They find this information out and now they have to they can't move forward, and now you are out of financing and potentially losing earnest money and inspection fees. So you don't want to do that. Make sure that anything that's of concern to you, go ahead and tell them, because it may not actually be an issue, or they may be able to help resolve it to make it a non-issue. Finally, don't get mad at the lender. And I'm going to tell you, you probably are, but we'll talk you off of the ledge. The lender is there. This is a big financial risk for them. They're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to help you purchase a home. So they're going to be asking questions. They want to make sure that you're not a risky buyer for them to fund your home purchase. So don't get mad at them. It's only a short period of time. Once you get your keys, you'll be good to go. So things that you want to do, particularly while you are in the mortgage process, but some of these things help before you actually start. So make sure you're paying all of your bills on time. Make sure it's consistent. So figure out the organization. The budgeting series will hopefully, or the budgeting video would hopefully get you in the mindset of creating that budget and making sure you are paying those bills on time. Gather all of your financial documents. So anything such as retirement accounts, your bank accounts, any other types of retirement savings that you have, just gather all of that information together you think of, because most likely the loan officer is going to ask for it. Do maintain stable employment and income, particularly during this time. So definitely don't decide to apply for a mortgage after you've been out of work for more than 6 months. So we definitely don't want to do that. You're not going to get approved. Do know what your debts are. And if you have watched the credit series, you are going to know what your debts are. And if there's anything that wasn't your debt, you would have already cleared it up. Do communicate with your lender. So always make sure if your lender's reaching out that you are available. And along that same vein, follow up with your lender timely. So if they call you on Tuesday, please don't wait until Friday to respond. Try to do it by Wednesday. And do stay within your budget. You don't want to be house poor. And I know you've heard this term. However, if you have gone through my budget video, then you are going to make sure that you stay within your budget, because I talk about the importance of that and how to determine what is your budget. So that's it. Hopefully now the fear of the loan process is at least lowered or eliminated. So things that we've talked about today, you have an idea of the timeline. You know some terms. You're now familiar with loan products, and you know how to pick a reliable lender, and you know what some do's and don'ts are for this process. So I hope that this was helpful to you. If you're ready to get started, please reach out to me. My contact information is below in the description. You can schedule a 15-minute discovery call with me just to chat. If you are already pre-approved, let's move to the buyer consultation, and we will work through that process to get you started with the home purchase. The next part of this series is going to be on the home search. So that's going to be the fun thing that we're going to talk about as the final part to this series. So make sure that you stay tuned. Make sure you like my channel, subscribe to my channel so that you can get those alerts. Look forward to talking to you. Have a great one.